I'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, Todd Wilkinson from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, to the stage. Todd's a co-owner and operator of a commercial cow-calf operation with his son Nick in De Smet, South Dakota. He's also a co-owner of Redstone Feeders, a family-owned cattle feeding and finishing operation. And in his spare time, he's managed to practice law for more than 40 years, specialising in estate planning and agricultural law. He's a graduate of Augustana College and the University of South Dakota's School of Law. His firm, Wilkinson and Schumacher, is sought out by landowners, calf cow, stocker and feeder segments across South Dakota when they are facing legal challenges. A big warm Alice Springs welcome, please, to Todd Wilkinson.
Thank you, sir.
Nick. Great to see you.
I have to start out by saying it's rare that I take the stage anywhere and somebody is more politically incorrect than me. So, David, thank you. I appreciate getting up behind somebody that's got some guts. So that is refreshing. So I want to say thank you for the invitation to be here. 25 hours is a long way to go, but it has been heartwarming. The reception that I've gotten, and amazing to me, the similarities in the issues that we face. But I didn't come all the way halfway across the world to talk to you, as it said in the lead up on this, to talk to you about the history of NCBA. So if you want a boring topic, you can read that online. That's not where I'm going, and that's not what I'm going to talk about. I want to ask first, I think this show was aired over here. I'm not sure. How many people saw the TV show Little House on the Prairie years ago? All right, now you can say that you have seen somebody that actually lives in the little town of the Prairie. Ma and Pa Ingalls are buried in my local cemetery. So that place does really exist. 3 of the books were written, and I come from a very rural area. I have to tell you that when I go around and speak, I usually say I'm from big cattle country. I am never going to say that thinking of Australia again. You are the definition of big cattle country. Where I come from, there just aren't a lot of people. And the people that are there usually understand the importance of agriculture and have grown up in it. But that's changing. And I come from a state that has 800,000 residents. Over half of them live in 2 cities. So there's very much a detachment between the urban sector and the rural sector. And that has caused a lot of issues. You know, I'm a guy that just wants to get the job done. And that's the way I approach things in my career over all these years. You know, I got involved because I was just doing what we needed to do to keep our operation going. I didn't really want a lot of input from other people as to how to graze our cattle and where we could put them and how to manage our cattle. But 25, 30 years ago, I started seeing all this influence come in across our state. People that didn't have an idea what a heifer or a steer was, that were telling me that suddenly they knew how better to run my operation. I'm probably labeled in where I come from as a true redneck. I will fight back if somebody gets involved in my business. And I did. But, first of all, my approach to that was simply to go down to our livestock barn and the coffee shop and bitch about everything else to my neighbors. So we had a communal gripe session. And after about 6 months, I figured out this isn't getting me anywhere. The activists were coming at us and they weren't backing up. And whatever we said in terms of complaining wasn't going to make a difference. So then I looked to my state organization, just like you. I looked for somebody that could help me. I rapidly determined that one voice Is this the voice crying in the wilderness, but a bunch of voices can have an impact? So I got involved in my organization, which is the equivalent of your organization. And I saw a positive impact. But then the issues just kept coming. They just kept coming, and they hit us on a national level. And the national ones really were taking hold in the United States. People and organizations that didn't even know where food came from were suddenly telling us in the United States how to run our operations. Words that I had no idea about years ago. Traceability, sustainability, all of these buzzwords suddenly were dictating my operation, my little operation in South Dakota. As I sat in that audience the last 2 days, the similarities were amazing. Absolutely amazing. I was shocked. I don't know. We all travel and we have preconceived opinions as to what's going to happen. But I can tell you that if you sat in my meeting in the United States, you would be shocked as well. That the message that is being delivered across the world is not coming from just a few folks. It's coming from a concerted effort. I talked to your board, and David and I and Sue had the opportunity to have supper, and I was just amazed that the issues all seem to revolve around similar organizations. You know, NCBA is the largest and oldest cattle organization in the United States. It's 126 years old now. And with our membership and our affiliates membership, we represent over a couple 100,000 producers. So we're the big dog in the United States. And normally you would think that we can get up and we can push back. Boy, did I get an education. You see, farmers and ranchers in the United States are 2% of the population. 2%. We live, if you looked at the map of the United States, we're in the heart of the middle of the country. Most of us. That's where the big feeding operations are. That's where the big cattle operations are. And we generally regard ourselves as good environmentalists ourselves. People don't have to tell us that we need to respect the land. Hey, we make our living off of it. That ought to sound real familiar to you. But East Coast and West Coast in the United States doesn't really give a rip what we think. And the people that are involved on the world and international scene don't give a rip what you think or what I think in terms of animal and farming practices. They have tuned us out. They have decided to go on a campaign. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an illustration. So organizations and the acronyms are probably a little bit different, and I'm going to touch on that in a minute. But I'm sure you've heard of PETA. I heard the word Pew, HSUS, ASPCA. Those organizations in the United States annually have operating budgets of $600 million. All of the ones I listed off, their goal, one of their stated goals, is to end animal agriculture. The only exception would be the Pew Foundation. They don't say it directly. They fund everybody else that's going to say it. Those organizations have got involved in our farm bill. And we've never seen them get into our farm bill. They're changing the dynamic. So suddenly our politicians, much like yours from what I just listened to, are sitting off and they're not in the country. They're hearing what the voices are telling them in their backyard, wherever they're elected at. And those voices are telling them that animal agriculture is bad, Farming is bad. We don't need all of this. We're going to solve the global warming because of all of these issues. Funk. I came 25 hours to tell you that you are not alone. To tell you that the organizations, and I did a little research, and maybe you will recognize some of these names, because clearly I don't recognize them because they're here. Organizations such as I apologize, I don't normally use any notes at all, so I believe it was Animals Australia, Farm Transparency Project, Australian Alliance for Animals. Do some of these names sound familiar to you? Well, I will tell you that if you look at their organization and you look at where they go to meetings and who they deal with on an international level, the names are and the acronyms are a little different when you go from country to country, but they all go back up to the top. And what we're seeing is tentacles coming down out of all these organizations that are dictating policy all across the world. I recently attended the World Meat Congress in the Netherlands in October. And I would tell you, redneck from South Dakota going into the World Meat Congress in the Netherlands, I was a duck out of water. I definitely didn't know what I was getting into. So as I walked into the meeting, there's probably 400 people, and there were representatives from every country in meat production in the world. I walked in there, and when I had my cowboy hat on, because I typically wear one, I was the only one in the joint with a cowboy hat on. And I looked at a couple of my officers out of Washington, D.C., and I said, this isn't good. And I'll guarantee you that room shifted as they saw that tall guy walking in, and I could just read their minds. Here comes the arrogant asshole from the U.S. I know that that's what that thought process was, but then I got to talk to some of those producers that were actually there, and their stories were alarming. Their stories were were telling me that their governments are telling them that they need to depopulate. The Dutch are geared to buy back 3,000 farms. The Irish are being told they got to reduce their cow numbers by 200,000. Finland is joining in on the course. And it goes on and on and on. And here we sit in this World Meat Congress, which we should be talking about the benefits that we do for the dietary standpoint, the benefit that we bring to the environment, and yet the whole discussion had us on our heels. I listened to people get up and talk about how their animal rights organizations were working with their government to develop the rules for herd management and sound animal science. Whoa, that just blew me away. That the very people that I'm fighting with in the U.S. are in some countries and are at the table and are writing the rules. And what's the scary part of this is if we all sit in our little isolationate area, if you just are concerned with what happens in Australia, if I'm just concerned with what happens in the U.S., they're going to run over us like a Mack truck. They're probably 10 years ahead of us. They are writing the script. And you say, where do they get all the funding? Oh, half of it comes out of Hollywood, California. You know, the Bill Gates of the world, the Leonardo DiCaprio's, the Richard Branson's, those people are funding your very extermination. And it's high time that the world's cattle producers stood up and take notice. You know, we don't need a bunch of woke people telling us what to do and when to do it. What we need is a bunch of awake producers to band together and tell them to go stick it in their ear. Because we need to be leading the discussion, not taking it. I was shocked. I really was shocked. David, I like you. I rarely am going to say what my enemies are going to want to hear, but I'm going to tell people what my producers want to hear. We want to know what the reality is. We want to know what we're playing against, who we got to deal with, what we got to deal with, and get in the fight. You need not just a regional, a state presence. You need a countrywide presence, but more importantly, you need an international presence. I'm here to tell you that the US, that Canada, and Mexico are already all joining together to start this fight. And we need Australia because you're the big dog in the game, and we need us all together. Forget about market issues. Forget about competition. We'll go nose to nose about that. I love competing on product issues. But we can't compete when we're such a small segment of the population. We can't compete with each other and let a bunch of radicals dictate what's going on in terms of the future of our organization. It is getting so bad that many of the EU countries have already laid down and they're doing whatever they're told. Yeah, there's some key ones that are fighting back, and they're willing to step up and jump into the fight. There's a number of other ones that have already given up. The people that are running them are dictating the terms for their organization. Heck, all you have to do is look at the U.S. We've had the radicals come out and literally wipe out the hog industry in California. Proposition 12, you won't be able to find a hog producer in California. And in case you're not aware of it, California has got a domestic product output that is in the top 20 in the world, just from that state. And yet those yahoos out there in California have been told what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. You know, we make a joke where I'm from in the United States that if there was a big earthquake sometimes and part of California dropped off into the ocean, we'd be a lot better off in the U.S. I can say that here. I get shot if I say it at home. There's a lot of good producers in California, but their voices is being drowned out by what's happening in that same process. It's amazing to hear the similarities as I sat in the audience the last 2 days. The call is to you. You need a strong, fighting national organization. Your state organizations are going to be the ones that are going to protect the local issues, and they'll push the discussion. You have to push the discussion. But on the international front, we need you so bad. And you know, we can talk about a lot of things, and the activists will use environmentalism, and they'll use global warming, and they'll use a whole bunch of different deals to get their foot in the door. But I was asked probably 6 months ago, what do I view as the biggest concern personally on a 10-year horizon? And my answer changed from when I started as the presidency in the U.S. to when I ended. Because there's a new phenomenon going on, and it's not so new, but it's gaining traction. And it's called cell-cultured protein. Now, a lot of us don't have a real good handle on cell-cultured protein. So let's start with, what is it? Well, they're going to take the cells out of one of your cows, and they're going to put them in a bioreactor. Think of a big beer vat. And you're going to dump a bunch of goop in there, and you're going to generate meat cells. Well, that sounds pretty innocuous. So what's the big concern with that? I listened in the Netherlands with a Harvard graduate who has a company from the Netherlands stand up and say her goal for her company is to capture 20% of the meat blended product. Now, I want you to just think about what I just said. You produce more meat than you can eat. My country brings in a lot of your lean meat because we are more marble. We need your 90s, your grind. And that gal that stood up on that stage said she's not worried about replicating chickens. It's too hard. Chickens reproduce so fast, it's not economical. She's focused on beef and pork. And beef primarily. Because she can take that product, and if you've read the stories about they're going to take a 3D printer and make steaks, that stuff isn't going to hurt your pocketbook. What's going to happen is if they take this goop and they can put it into ground beef, if they can take and make 20% of the grind, some of you won't be here economically because you're going to be out of business. That's how big a deal this is. And remember, those animal activists, they had a common theme. Well, think about this. All of a sudden, they can say that this stuff can be harvested without killing an animal. We don't have to graze the land. We don't need to worry about the footprint. We can grow this crap in beer vats and feed the world. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what it will. I want to give you some statistics, and I found this remarkable. This is from Yahoo, and I'm not a social media person. So, lab-grown meat is expected to hit market value of $960 million in the next 5 years. Cultivated meat startups raised $1.95 billion in 86 deals in 2021. Now, if I got my numbers right, Australia exports about 90% of its beef production. A lot of that is going into 90s. A lot of that is coming at my country, and we need it. We get a lot of it from Mexico. Mexico understands the issue. Suddenly, if you take all of that lean product and you replace 20% of it, you're going to put many producers out of business. And if you think this is just all smoke and mirrors and a pipe dream, I'm going to tell you it's not. Because again, think of it. Meat without slaughter. Meat without ranches. Meat without you. Is this hitting home? Now you know why I came 25 hours to talk about this. I was told by my predecessor, it said, Todd, your tour of duty is over. You don't need to keep doing this. Like your officers, we don't get paid to do this. We do it because we volunteer. I do this because I want to see my son And my grandsons and granddaughters know that they're going to be in business 40, 50, and 60 years from now. Cell-cultured goop. And the animal activists are running the show on the world stage. They're absolutely running the show. You know, we can all go home to my discussion with you earlier. We can all go home and go back to our operations and say, I'm just going to focus on my operation. I'm going to make it as good as I can, and we're going to continue on, and you'll be successful. Those of you that are my age, you're not going to get blasted by cell-cultured meat right away. But I want you to think about your sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters and where the world is going to be if the idiots are dictating how world policy is shaped. Because frankly, right now, they are. This is scary. I don't know that my operation will survive 20 years out if 20% of the meat supply is coming out of a beer vat. I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to fight with everything I got. And I'm going to go down swinging. And if there's a bunch of other Davids in this room, I know you're going to swing too. Don't let the radicals dictate what happens across the world. You gotta get in the fight. Our goal is to bring the biggest meat producers across the world together and to go in and fight on the world stage where we've been not nearly active enough. This is a big deal, folks. It's a big deal to your operation, but it's more importantly, it's a big deal to our future. So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put it right to you. Is Australia going to sit on the shores and just rely on what happens in this country? And are you going to put the blinders on and forget about what happens on the international stage? Are you going to step in the fight? Are you going to go make a difference? I know this isn't a topic that you ever anticipated hearing about, but I'm going to tell you it is squarely facing you in the next 5 to 10 years. When JBS pours $71 million into a plant in Spain that is supposed to be online by the middle of 2024 making this product on a commercial level, it's real. The big dogs are now in it. And when the very packers that we sell to are already seeing the handwriting on the wall and understanding that there's a challenge out there, we're a little late. We got to get in the game. We got to push back on this. You know, I wasn't afraid of the fake meat discussion when it was soybeans and seafood derivatives. You know, when COVID hit in the United States, that crap stayed on the shelves. The meat was gone. The real meat was gone. All of this fake crap stayed there. And countries like Beyond Meat went shoof and watched their stock go from 113 down to 13 bucks. They're laying off staff. But now you put a different dynamic into it when you can say that this is coming from cells of a live animal. Suddenly, that person reaching into the freezer or into the coolers at the grocery store is going to have this crap mixed in with their beef. Some people are standing up already. Italy is the first country globally to ban it completely. France is coming out and using past legislation to say that beef has to be real beef, not some crap grown in a bioreactor. A number of states across the United States have passed laws that they're not going to be able to sell this stuff. We're going to use the animal activist playbook and put it on its head. So instead of them telling us how we do business, we're going to tell them that our areas are not open for business for your crap. Come on and get in the fight with me. Get in the fight, because I will tell you what, America's producers are willing and itching to go throw a punch. The Canadians want to throw a punch in the worst way. We got to have you. Our discussion goes nowhere unless we have Australia. You're that big of a player. So come on, get in the fight. Let's throw a right and a left. Thank you.